always be freedom. It'll always be freedom.
If we are going to create freedom in our lifetime, we need to explore alternative ways to build community and remove ourselves from centralized institutions that corrupt and erode. So join us for the 2026 Non-Conformist Series and learn how to survive the apocalypse. Visit Anarchapulco.com to get your virtual tickets. May 16th and 17th, 2026. It's 2 days of insight, action, and connection with guests like Jeff Burrick, David Avocado Wolf, Bluebird Collins, and Charlie Robinson. Your preparedness tools are the spark. Ignite them now. Get tickets at Anarchapulco.com.
Welcome to Conversations in Anarchy. Today we are continuing introducing the upcoming Non-Conformist Series, newest edition, Unleash Your Freedom, Claim Your Sovereignty, that is just a week away. So it's happening live on May 16th and 17th, but don't be sad or anything if you cannot be there live, because replay is going to be available. So just check it out on anarchapulco.com. Today I have a very special person with us because I would say she's probably the main person behind the Non-Conformist Series. So it's going to be really interesting to hear what she has to say. Please welcome Miranda Webb. Hi, Miranda.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for being here today. Am I saying right when I say that you're at least one of the main persons behind the scenes?
I would say that I am the main producer, but it's me, it's Kat, and Kat's approving all the agreements, and she was actually the one that came up with the theme this time. I had a different idea for the theme. But her theme for the How to Survive the Apocalypse thing was inspired by what happened in Puerto Vallarta this year. So, but I am the one that does a lot of the majority of the legwork in terms of like finding the speakers, getting them to respond, getting them to make sure they turn in their presentations, and making sure the schedule and everything is functional and accessible and makes sense.
So yeah, then I would say that you are one of the main persons and probably with the most difficult job, because some speakers can be like, really, yes, I'm in, I'm doing it, and sending all the things, and then some you have to wait for quite a while, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's
But
not always the same speakers all the time. Like Marjorie. Marjorie's been very easy in the past, but she's so busy right now that it's very much like I don't know when I'm gonna see Marjorie's speech for this one. But we'll see.
yeah, but is she on? Because I haven't
She is.
seen
She is.
her.
As of last week, she
Okay.
told me that she's gonna do it. But it's definitely gonna be down to the wire, I think, 'cause she's got a lot of things going on at her farm and everything.
Yeah, but let's talk about this Smoky Sunday that inspired the whole newest edition of the Non-Conformist Series. Where were you on that day, and what happened? Like, how was you, and how did it influence you? All the events.
Um, I was working TDV or TCV as stage manager, so I was running that event basically because like Kat doesn't tend to go to that. Jeff, he wasn't even there yet. And I'd gotten there and I had literally driven right through one of the intersections where there was a burning car, like famously, it's called Las Juntas in Puerto Vallarta. And I had literally went through that intersection, gotten coffee like 10 minutes before somebody set a car on fire there. And I didn't notice anything. I got there and I was getting ready to start the day and I'm like, Rafael Laverde, he was the MC and of course like the man behind Crypto Vigilante. And I'm like sitting there like, where the fuck is Raf? Like it's 9:01. We're supposed to be starting now. Like where is he? And I was looking for him, but apparently he was on his way like navigating around burning vehicles. Like, huh, this is weird, but still coming in. Um And then it was like maybe 10 minutes through his speech where I started seeing videos of burning cars. And then there had been a situation where one of our attendees, because the people for the Anarch Awakening retreat were coming to the venue to meet to get a ride out to the retreat that day. And a couple that was on their way to do that, the taxi driver they were with had gotten shot and his car set on fire. Now, we weren't sure if he was alive. He is alive. He's okay. I think he was just shot in the arm or something like that.
Mm.
Um, but they lost their luggage and everything. And so like they had just come in like hysterical. And that's when I was like, ah, crap. So this is a little intense. Okay. So I started letting people know and making sure people were inside because we were hearing gunfire, we were hearing explosions, we were hearing all sorts of things. And I just remember walking outside and seeing smoke in all directions, and then seeing like a couple gringos, including Tim Pichat, like filming, talking like newscaster style. And I was like, you guys like stray bullets? No, you should probably get the fuck inside, you know? So like I was responsible for like 150 people there at that day because I was the one leading that event, and it was really interesting to see how people reacted. Raphael went from like, okay, whatever, I'm from Colombia, we'll deal with this, to I have a family, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I'm gonna go hang out with the alligators. Like, we need to get the fuck out of here. And I'm like, where exactly are we going to run to? They're saying not to go to the streets because random people are getting killed. Like, no, we need to just stay here and continue the event. I already have the speakers that aren't already here. They already have Zoom links, so they know to come in. We can continue the event. Like, what are you doing? And he's like, no, we need to get the hell out. We need to get the hell out. And he and I were yelling at each other. And I was like, I can't talk to you. And he's like, I can't talk to you either. So I messaged Jeff and I said, Jeff, you need to come get your boy and deal with him because he's making my life harder than it needs to be. And within 5 minutes of that, Raphael sent me a message that said, You're my warrior princess, and was like, that's his version of an apology. And then he was chill the rest of the day. But it was, there was one point where I was like outside bringing people back inside, and I heard a motorcycle throwing like metal spikes into the road and laughing maniacally. Like, it definitely felt very Mad Max. I was honestly pissed off because I did not want to be dealing with all of that while working. It was the last day. I was like, ah, finally, I can rest tomorrow. And no, it didn't work out that way. And we finished most of the event. There was only one part we didn't do, and that was because the venue told us, like, you guys have to leave. We'll bring an ambulance to help you evacuate if you don't have a car, but you need to leave. And so I think everybody but 10 people left, if I remember correctly, including myself. And yeah, the next morning I woke up and my boyfriend was like, we need to leave this city. I don't want to be here anymore. And I was like, okay. But there are spikes all over the road that are like punching people's tires and making it so they can't drive anymore. I don't really want to deal with that. And then Jeff was like, "Oh yeah, we're getting ready to go in this direction." I'm not going to dox him and, mention where his farm is specifically, but it was the same direction that we needed to go. And so we were like, "Okay, can we come with you?" Because we had a car, but we just didn't want to go it alone. And it took us almost 9 hours to make what is usually a 4 hour drive, 3.5, 4 hour drive, because we kept getting turned around and stuff. And I saw probably 100 burned vehicles along the way. And then the next morning, we went the second leg to our home, and it took probably 6 hours, 7 hours to do what's normally a 3.5, 4 hour drive.
Mm.
But what I will say is there was a lot of talk of killing civilians in the streets and all of that, and that wasn't really happening. There was a lot of gunfire, but I suspect it was a lot of like shooting guns into the air or at the ground to make it seem like there was a lot of scary things. There were obviously some people getting shot, but it was mostly just burned vehicles. It was mostly a systematic nationwide because it was all over the country. It was in Playa del Carmen. It was all over the country. So it was kind of like a systematic nationwide shutdown of the transport zones. And to me, it felt orchestrated, especially it was like maybe 3 weeks after Trump was threatening to invade Mexico. And so it felt orchestrated. It wasn't as bad as people thought it was. I wasn't necessarily scared. I was pissed. I was really angry. Um, but I know there were people that were scared. I know there were people that were, like really frightened. And then I know that, like our VIP plus people were just sitting in the Westin, in a nice hotel, like seeing the smoke in the distance. But um yeah, but that whole thing, like a lot of the team had to, figure out creative ways to get water, to get gas. Some people were siphoning gas to get out of the city to someplace calmer. The grocery stores were shut down. The gas stations, except for one, were shut down. Like a lot of stuff was really kind of completely shut down. And it was an important reminder, and that's why this version of Non-Conformist Series was born, because we really needed to kind of remember, you know, what to do in these things. It's nice to talk about crypto and healing and blah blah blah, all these things, but like what do you actually do, if things stop functioning? Because there were no police at all until later in the day. Um, no military, nothing. So it went on for about 8 hours, just complete free for all. And that's kind of what part of what made it feel orchestrated. But yeah, so that's kind of a long answer, but it was a long day.
Yes, I believe so. But yeah, it felt orchestrated from my side while I was not in Mexico because it was so like so much information about it. While usually it is like almost nothing when some things are happening in Mexico. So that
There was a lot
one
of
thing
AI
alone.
generated stuff. Like there was a video of a plane burning in Guadalajara with people inside of it, which that didn't happen. Um, there were building or videos of churches burning down and skyscrapers burning in Puerto Vallarta. First off, there's not much for skyscrapers there. Secondly, the closest we got to any building burning was some trucks in front of the Costco, but the Costco itself was fine, like there were some Oxos and some Farmacias burning as well. Yeah, it was a little overblown.
Yeah, but that's good. That's good that it was um, painted more dramatic than it was actually, at least for all the people that were there present in those burning car trucks. And yeah, I'm sure it was scary for many people. Just this thought alone about okay, how long is it gonna happen? Because nobody knew that it was only one day. It could go like for I don't know, few days or a week or whatever. And yeah, of course, also for us that were at home and just okay, I cannot do anything. I can just hope that everything goes well and that that everybody returns home safely. But if you look at the Anarchapulco, back at Anarchapulco in general, in Puerto Vallarta, because you have been to so many Anarchapulco events in Acapulco, so you're the one really that knows what the difference was this year to be in Puerto Vallarta. How would you describe that?
For me, it was my favorite, the actual event itself, because I really like the venue. The venue is very similar to where I held Anarchapulco in 2018 when that project started. We rented the convention center in Acapulco, which is actually it's a very similar property basically and very similar staff. So for me, it kind of felt like a resurgence of that. The one in Puerto Vallarta is um, obviously it's a nicer venue, right? But it was very similar down to like the like little like triangular things that they had outside. They had those things, same things in Acapulco before the hurricane. Um, and it's nice because it usually we're dealing with shade issues and heat issues and bug issues and all these, infrastructure issues that we didn't really have to deal with this year. The biggest problem from an event planner standpoint was they had us pay individually for hotspots. I think we paid for like five of them, and it wasn't cheap. It was like $500 each for the week,
Mm.
and almost none of them worked. It was a constant battle of like begging them to get the internet to work as they promised it would, which made working hard, like registration most of the time did not have internet and was running off of Mike's hotspot um from his cell phone. So there were little things that we were figuring out, but the actual event was really smooth. Um there was, of course, there's always some sort of drama here and there, but it wasn't extensive. There was no, like, I was going to say there was no mass sickness, but me and Kat and several of the team were actually very sick the first day, but it was different, and it very short-lived, like 12 to 24 hours. And then we were back to work. I was basically sleeping backstage the first day. Um, because of it, I didn't sleep the night before. But it was a very good event and there were very good people there and the vibe was really high. I know that some people say it lacked the community vibe. I think that can be fixed pretty easily. Um, Housing was our biggest issue, was something with Puerto Vallarta that we noticed is unless you're paying like $2,000 a month minimum, maybe more actually, because there were some places that we rented for quite a bit of money for the month that were not at all what they were advertised to be. Like the staff house that Kat, not staff house, but it was a house that Kat had rented for her and her family and Naja and everything. And she got there and it was filled with black mold. And the place where I got to that we had rented for, a few of us on the team, we got there and the room that I was supposed to stay in, the outlets for the plugs were hanging out of the wall by the wires, among other issues. And so we had decided to I ended up paying out of pocket and staying at a hotel, which that was, not cheap, but it was worth it because I needed to be comfortable and be able to sleep well and have access to the things that I needed. So that was a struggle. We've learned a lot. We did find some really good places, like the hotel that I stayed at was the Hampton Inn, and it wasn't that far, and we could theoretically, get buses and stuff, and it wasn't that expensive for the quality of what you got, right? So moving to a new place, it was nice for me personally. Acapulco, I was getting tired of it because I am in the unique situation that my worst traumas of my life happened in Acapulco. So every time I go there, it was like the entire city for me is a ghost. Um,
Mm.
yeah, there's not really a better way to put that. The entire city's a ghost, especially because the house that I lived in, where all that happened, when you're in the main bay, you can look up to that hill. If you can see that hill, you can see my house from like 70 to 85% of anywhere you're at in the main bay. Um, it's a literal ghost. I do have a lot of love for Acapulco. I will go back. Like we are talking about putting on a retreat at Bambuda during Thanksgiving. That's most likely going to happen. And if that happens, I will go back, right? I'll go back to Bambuda to see Vistara and Christian. But for me, it was refreshing to be in a place where, like, I've been to Puerto Vallarta, but I didn't really have strong memories either way. I had gone for a friend's wedding and left, and so there wasn't really my past memories painting my experience there, right? And there is a heaviness, in my opinion, to the energy in Acapulco. Um, but there's also more freedom there, in my opinion, because the government of Puerto Vallarta, specifically the police, can be really hard to deal with. And there's a lot of immigration checkpoints and things of that nature. And that was a little bit nerve-wracking for me. I did drive through an immigration checkpoint by myself at like 10 o'clock, but because I was, just a solo white lady in a brand new car, they left me alone, thank God. But it was nerve-wracking. And I do know a few people that came to the conference that got hassled for their visas and stuff like that. They do have a gentrification issue of too many white people coming there. So there is almost a resentment from the locals about, okay, now there's even more white people here, great, that don't speak Spanish. But they do
Mm.
raise their respect for you if you speak Spanish, and I am one of the few that do. But yeah, that's another long-winded answer, but it was a big thing. It was a huge thing to pick up an event that had always happened in Acapulco and move it across the country and start over.
Yeah, but what there were, I'm sure there were some moments at least where you felt, okay, yes, this is maybe tiring and this is maybe not working, but still, when I'm doing this, this is why we do it. This is why we continue every year, despite of all the difficulties and hurricanes and shootings and whatever. It was, yeah, when I heard about the shooting, it was like, really? Like every year something has to happen. It's not just before, just after the
Right.
Anarchapulco.
Right. And I mean, there's always those moments. Really, like for me, that it's like the month before I leave for Anarchapulco, wherever it is, I'm always kind of like, why the fuck do I do this? Because it's so much work, and it's
Yeah.
constant of like, hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do that? Hey, can you do this? It's time sensitive, it's time sensitive, it's time sensitive. And it's just like, why do I do this? Um, but then once I actually get there and I'm around the team and I'm getting to see people that I only get to see because they come to Anarchapulco, it's at that point that I really get to kind of breathe and enjoy it, right? And so really that flows throughout the event itself. And then it's usually the last day of the last, because like we have these, TDV and TCV side events that happen after Anarchapulco. And I'm generally the only one that works them. It's me and the stage crew. This time it was me and Lee Andrew, who was part of the stage crew, but in general, like Kat and Kale and Mike, and well, Mike is there for registration, but the majority of the team is not there on those days, and they're all there out relaxing and enjoying themselves. That's the hardest part of it for me. But other than that, like it's wonderful getting to see my people. I was stage manager this year and I was sitting stage side most of the time. And by day two, we have David Alcock, who is our new like stage side manager. By day two, like I basically told Kat, I am cool to make the agreements, to make the schedule. I'm not sitting here in this spot all day, every day next year. We're having David do that. I'm not doing that. Because I have ADHD, I'm not meant to be focused on one task for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. I'm meant to be running around in chaos. And people have always felt bad for me when they see me literally running in Anarchapulco, like from thing to thing that needs help or attention. But that's where I thrive. And really by like 2 p.m. each day after I was done being sick, I was finding reasons to leave stage side to go do anything else, right? Um, and this year was the first year I really became thankful that Anarchapulco seems to always be between on my birthday. And I've asked for years, can we not do it on my birthday? And Kat's like, we're not planning the conference around your birthday. But this year I was thankful because it occurred to me like, where else in the planet or who else in the planet gets to have 800 people sing happy birthday to them because that's what happened. And I mean, usually I hate that, but it was funny because Kat was like on the stage. I was backstage or something. I was not close, but I heard her yelling, "Where's Miranda? Where's Miranda? There's a crisis on the main stage." And I was like, "Oh God." And I go running over and I'm like, "What's happening?" And she's like, "Get up on the stage." And I was like, "Ah, crap." So I get up on the stage and everybody starts singing, and I'm like, okay, well, that is special, you know? And the connections that you have, like Piazza and I have always been close, but we were very close this year. She's done energetic work of all different kinds for me, but this year I had a ceremony with her, a Bufo, well, 5-MeO, not technically Bufo, right before, with like she called it the Queen's session or something like that, but it was basically like this feminine power day around taking care of my hormone situation and stuff. And it was, it changed everything for me. So I went in on this like total high. Even though I was sick, I was still happy to be there. And then like Wednesday was my birthday. And at one point I was walking around at Bearheart. We all love Bearheart. He's our main shaman. He was like, I'm going to give you the truth for your birthday. And I'm like, okay, what's that? And he tells me, the only reason I keep coming back here, the biggest reason, not the only reason, the biggest reason is you. And I was like, that's a lot of pressure. And he's like, no, I need to see, because you can't come to me, so I have to see what you're doing now because it amazes me. You are a medicine woman. And I was just like, oh, well, how dare you make me cry on my birthday, but he's all these people I wouldn't have without Anarchapulco. So really the whole thing is like, okay, this is why I do it. It's really those weeks before I'm actually there where it's like constantly editing or updating the website and constantly, fixing this or working on that or trying to get this response from this person or trying to finalize that agreement and oh, we don't know when this person's showing up and oh, we don't know where to put them and that is the part that's hard. Really, the rest of the time, I would not trade it for the world. Now, what I said in my speech, which I did post my speech as my first podcast, what I said is,
Yes, but congratulations with that.
did
Really,
you see
really
it?
great. I have watched it. Yes, 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 yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Well, then you'll remember during that I said, if Cat goes from Anarchapulco, so do I. And
Yeah,
that's
but I
that's true.
totally get it. I mean, I
Yeah.
haven't experienced any other like producers before her, but I mean, I know what you mean because she's really special. She's really taking care of everyone. And also, when I talked to her on the Conversations in Anarchy, and she and Paolo, they were the first ones when we were starting introducing the upcoming Non-Conformist series. And she said, "Oh yeah, and only when I came home, I kind of felt that okay, now I can cry about that Sunday and all the stress because I was so busy taking care of everyone, making sure that everyone's okay and everything is okay." And that's I totally believe it because that's how she is. I mean, she's really great with her team, but she can be also like strict if we if we push her to, and she's really not afraid to communicate the conflict or call people for mediations, and she's making sure that there are people like Piazza or Vistara or whoever that year is invited to be that, but who's helping people in conflicts and with communication. And yes, yes, I totally get. And I mean, you guys, you are, as you say, wifey's for lifey. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Which that was a really sweet part of this conference, like on a personal note, because like when Kat and Paolo got married in 2020, I told him, like, you do realize she was my wife first, right? Like, I'm sharing her with you. I give you my blessing, but she was mine first. And he's like, oh yes, we share her. But he didn't really embrace it until this year. And like it was quite sweet. There were a few moments where he would come up to me and just go, "Where's our wifey?" And like the people around us are like, "What does that mean?" Like what kind of weird shit's happening here? It's truly platonic, there's nothing weird going on there, but the reality is like Kat and I are very, very close. And it's rare because it's very rare to have somebody that you can be that level of close with and work professionally with.
Mm.
It's not something that's very common, you know. And like by the end of the event, he's like, so if you and Kat are wifeys, what does that make me and you? And what does that make me with your fiance? Like, what are we? And I was like, oh, your husbands-in-law, you know? And I'm your wifey-in-law, but like, you know, Kat and I are wifeys. So deal with it. And it was quite sweet.
Talking about Berhard telling that you're a medicine woman, and listening to those that have were at Anarchapulco, listen to that at Anarchapulco. Those that haven't been there, that have watched the podcast first episode, listen that there. So your life story is pretty dramatic and rough, like since the conception of your soul or something. And
Right.
this what you have also often explained, and also on that Acapulco speech, that you were for a long time in this abusive relationship, and it is not always, for some people it's not even possible. I mean, for some people it's really hard to actually allow themselves or work so deeply that they open up for like true love and true care from other people, like now you have a partner that is really loving, as I understand, and I hope.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah,
And I
he's an angel.
yeah, and this is also one of the things that I personally have experienced, and that's definitely also surviving apocalypse is really important. This skill to love yourself and to allow others to love and take care. What have been the, I don't know, the most important tools that you have found and used on your journey to actually manage to, yeah, come from really bad relationship to loving and caring relationship, that you really feel that you can thrive and you say that, okay, that guy is my soulmate?
Yeah, so it was not an easy road. There was a lot of like guilt, you know, like once I realized that, because it's easy while you're in the abuse to be like, oh, this is so terrible and he's so evil and poor me, right? And even for the months after, you know, as you kind of dissect things, like I would not have witnessed a murder if he wasn't as abusive as he was. The reason that people wanted him dead was not anything to do with drugs, in my opinion. It was it was the way he treated people. And that is really difficult, you know, to contend with, because not only, you know, did that affect me, but I allowed it to affect me. I wasn't at that point strong enough to walk away. You know, like I'm so inspired by my best Mexican friend, Stephanie. She's like a little sister to me. I'm inspired by her because I've watched her fall in love this year, and he did one serious thing to really disrespect her, and she was like, "Yeah, bye." And I was just like, "Damn, if I could have done that, you know, I probably would not be in the legal situation that I'm in, right? I ended up in this legal situation because I was isolated from my friends and family, and I allowed it to happen. That being said, like I think everything happened the way it needed to. But there were things that really made the difference. Really, the biggest one, the first one, was my community. Because when everything was hopeless, they were helping me financially, they were keeping me doing fun things, they were helping me talk about it. Um, I had Thaddeus Russell, who I'm gonna film a podcast with him in the next like 2 or 3 weeks, but I had him talking to me every day for almost 3 months after the murder because I was not all right, and his parents were psychotherapists, so he had like that side to him, and he was really good, you know, in that way. And yeah, so I mean, he helped me find a therapist, and that therapist was amazing. She helped me realize like there's a difference between paranoia and vigilance, and I kept calling myself paranoid. Paranoia is when you have a bunch of anxiety over something that has no basis, right? She's like, you're being vigilant because you do have reason to be scared, right? Your house was shot up, and I'm like, well, that's, a good point. And then I had Bambuda itself and Vistara, the retreat center, like, and her, like, they forced me to be strong, they forced me to stop whining about it. And then I started doing circus. And that is my way of, I make the joke I'm out climbing my demons, but I kind of am, it's the only way I could get myself out of my head and back into my body. And it remains that way to this day. Um, I moved 2 blocks away from my favorite circus gym, so now I can, and I'm going to do that when we're done here. I'm going to get up and walk over there and go train. Um, because it really does, when your life is literally in your hands and you're upside down, you have to focus on your body and not what's going on in the mind. And that makes a huge difference. All sorts of exercise. I also weight lift now. Um, it's absolutely necessary, but really it's community, it's Mexico, and the ability, I had the space and the time to just not be okay for a while. A lot of times when people go through things in the US or Canada or more expensive countries, they're too busy trying to survive. Whereas I was getting donated for about a year. I had a few friends that were donating a couple $100s a month to me, and at the time my costs were so low that made it so I could eat, pay my rent, and just breathe, right? Um, and by the time that year was over, I had work primarily first through Cat and then through other people through word of mouth. And then I also found a lot of healing through my work because I'm a manifesting generator in human design. I'm meant to be here to do things. I'm not here to just sit and do nothing. So it was a lot of things. It was also various forms of medicine like microdosing. I've microdosed specifically psilocybin and LSD. That has helped me a lot. In some ways more than regular psychedelics. I've done, various ceremonies. I used to be kind of anti-shaman and anti-ceremony because I didn't think you needed to pay some guy hundreds of dollars to watch you trip, but I realized actually through my experiences first with Bearheart and then with Piazza this year that the person that takes care of you through that vulnerability makes all of the difference, right? Like Bearheart has that very masculine, I'm gonna watch over you and I'm gonna let you do your thing energy, right? Whereas Piazza's this like mothering, like she's sprinkling rose petals on me and like essential oils and wafting me with this like wing fan that she made and singing and playing music and like that was one of the most profound experiences of my life. And it was because of her, and then there was a point where I needed a hug. And so I literally just laid on her and cried for like 15 minutes, but I needed it, right? So I've really built, it's really my lifestyle in general, where like if I need to just take a day and not do stuff, I have the freedom to do that, and that is very special. So it's a lot of different things that I've tried. Some things have worked better than others, but all of it has had some role in building the puzzle that is my daily life now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, of course, what we need, like many pieces. But you mentioned community, that it was and probably still is both big part of what helped you to actually survive and thrive, but also what keeps you coming back to Anarchapulco and stuff. Um, do you think, like, for example, surviving a apocalypse, is it possible to do it without a community?
Yeah, plenty of people do have experiences where they can do it without a community. But the level of trauma that remains in the body after those sorts of experiences, without having a community is very difficult. Like I am going to do a presentation. I'm probably going to film it today. Um, but for me personally, the I've done apocalyptic type situations with and without community. Before I moved to Mexico, I lived in Cleveland, Ohio, and I know that doesn't sound, I mean, Cleveland is very like steampunk, right? But I lived in the east side of Cleveland in the middle of the ghetto in this house that was barely standing. Like, I'm talking when it was snowing outside, it was snowing inside.
Oh
And
my
the
God.
back stair, the house itself was twisted because the neighbor's pool had caved in the basement and messed up the foundation. And so when you went up the stairs were sideways. And I had no running water, I had no electricity, I had no gas, so it was truly a survival situation. And I moved in there in the middle of winter when it was like negative 14 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like negative 30 or 40 degrees Celsius. It was very cold. I did not know how to start a fire. I did not know how to chop firewood. I did not know how to do any of the things that's necessary to keep yourself warm. And I had several mental breakdowns because at the time I was with my ex John, but he was closing out a house that we had lived in um like 45 minutes away, and I was at this house by myself, primarily alone for about 6 weeks. I'd see him every like 3 or 4 days for a few hours at a time, but otherwise it was me. And it was literally snowing indoors, It was literally like I thought I was gonna freeze to death. Well, it was me and it was a pit bull. There was a dog there too. But like it is I'm grateful I had that experience. But it is very hard in survival situations to do things without a community. And that really is why we were moving to Detroit, where Fireweed University was, because it was very post-apocalyptic. In that part of Detroit, a lot of burned down buildings and abandoned houses and all of that. But there was a community there, and they were working together to clean the places and put roofs on certain spots and all these things, right? So, it is possible. It's not fun, and it is very hard to emotionally cope with what's going on. Whereas, like, part of why I was mad when the things on February 22nd happened is I was like, I don't need any more trauma. Ugh. Like, because they were afraid that people were going to come in and start shooting us because we were in a government building, and I had to like, I had them put blinds over the windows so that way we could continue the event, but not look like a bunch of like birds in a cage just waiting to be slaughtered. Now, nothing like that was happening, right? But they were very real threats that were being perpetrated throughout the media. And so you have to consider those things to be serious. Like we all drove, whoever had cars, we all drove our cars behind the venue out of view of the road to make it look like nobody was there because we were afraid
Mm.
if they thought somebody was there that they would come in, whoever they is, right? Um, that being said, I think because of the emotional work I've done to myself and because of the community, well, would I say I'm traumatized by what happened in Puerto Vallarta? No, not in the slightest. Like, did it suck? Yeah, it was really annoying. It was not what I really wanted to deal with. Um, but like, I'm one of the biggest people that is pushing for us to do the event at the same exact venue, despite having been locked in that venue for 8 hours,
Mm.
12 hours, thinking that, people could come in and try to kill us. Uh, I love that venue. I like the staff a lot that works there. I like the setup. I like how easy it was to run an event there. It's a beautiful place. Like, I am one of the biggest people that's like, yeah, let's not do it in a fancy, expensive resort. I also don't want to have to raise tickets, 3 times as much to do it in an all-inclusive but beautiful resort, right? Um, so yeah, it's definitely easier when you have community to deal with apocalyptic times, especially because when I was farming, it is very hard to produce vegetables, make sure you have water, make sure you have electricity, make sure you have what you need to cook food, like firewood. I was literally collecting firewood and, cooking my food. I was canning mulberry jam on a wood stove when I was living off grid in Ohio. And I was doing everything myself. It was all myself, and then like raising meat on top of that. If you do that and getting milk and like all the things, like it is much easier, in my opinion, to have a community around you where, okay, I've got the chickens, they have some goats. That guy over there, he's really good at gardening. This lady over here, she's really good with natural health and herbal healing, like and to just be able to, okay, I need milk, I'll give you this, right? You can't do that if you're doing it alone.
Yeah, that can feel really, really tough. Can you give us a little sneak peek in what you're going to be talking about on the Non-Conformist series?
I've mentioned a little bit of it because I have the unique experience that I have been in some genuine survival situations of because the whole point of what we did in Cleveland was it was a friend's house that they hadn't lived in 20 years. And they were afraid that the government was going to try to steal it for taxes, but they couldn't do that if somebody lived there. That's the way the laws were. Um, and we didn't want to pay rent. And also, we were in Cleveland, right? We were in the worst part of Cleveland, but we were in Cleveland, so if we needed something, we could drive for 15 minutes and go to a Walmart and buy something like, like those little propane heaters, right? Those helped me survive through the nights and other various things. We were using generators at times for power. Like we were trying to use solar power, but long story short, those batteries, when they got too cold, they exploded all over the place, covering everything battery acid. It was not good. But like we did that with the intent of like, okay, if an apocalypse style situation happens, we want to at least have these skills already built up. And then when I moved to Acapulco, we continued the same sort of work. We made a bread oven, we made rocket stoves, which we had already done in Cleveland. Rocket stoves are literally like just bricks arranged with certain dimensions. So when you and like a grate and a little hole for sticks and a hole for airflow, and it roars like a rocket, and you can cook food with a small pile of sticks instead of a big wood fire,
Mhm.
right? And it can be very directed. And so we were building those out of mud, we were building those out of bricks, we were making a wood-fired pizza oven. We had, we tried gardening, which people think that farming in Acapulco because of the weather is easy. It is not because you don't have winter there, everything is always trying to eat everything. And things like tomato plants and squash and stuff like that are delicate and they get destroyed. It's part of why we switched to chicken farming and egg farming. And so like I have unique experience and when I lived in Acapulco at first, I was living off of 300 pesos a week for food for two people and two dogs. That
That's
is
not a lot.
no, that's about $15.
Yeah.
And I was eating a lot of eggs and a lot of potatoes at that time. And I was growing tomatoes and we had banana trees on the property and stuff, but we just didn't have money. We didn't have bank accounts, we didn't have money, and people didn't know us yet. So, like, I've been in survival situations, I would say more often than most people. And so I'm really going to be talking about my experiences with that, things that I've learned after my experiences in Cleveland. When I moved to Mexico, I moved here with the axes, like the axes that I used to chop firewood to survive in Cleveland. I never used them in Acapulco for obvious reasons. It's not like we needed to keep warm, but I was trying to be, in my own way, very, very apocalypse ready. I know a lot about foraging, and I have foraged a lot of food, like the mulberry jam I was making. I was literally foraging mulberries from trees around. and making jam, and my ex was selling it to people at his work for money, So it's really just going to be, because for me, the biggest thing I have to talk about is my own personal experiences. My life right now is not a survival situation, right? Like, it's actually quite luxurious for what I'm used to. I hand washed clothes for years. And as you know, recently I bought one of those weird AI washer dryer combo things, and my it opens the door for me and it sings and it's got its little touch screen, and I'm remembering the days I washed everything by hand for years, for 8 years straight, So it's really just going to be sharing my own story and what I've learned and things that people might need to know when either in urban apocalyptic situations, which is where most of my experience is, or otherwise.
Okay, it's gonna be interesting. Is there anything else you would like to tell about the upcoming Non-Conformist series in general that that the audience should or would have benefit to know?
Well, based off of the speeches that have been submitted so far, and only like 5 or 6 of them have been, I'm waiting on the other like 12, 13. It's very practical. So if you were looking for information on like what foods to grow and like how to set up mesh networks and have communication, because that was the thing that we realized, um, there was threats of the internet going down and stuff like that. Okay, so how do we communicate? We were all trying to get this mesh phone thing to work, which wasn't really that powerful. Really, you need to set up mesh networks before apocalypse times. And that's kind of what this whole thing is about, is like if you are one of those people, and a lot of Jeff's followers are specifically, right, that think that the grid is going down and we are going to be living in these times soon, um, it's probably better to have experience and have these systems set up before then. Me personally, do I think the apocalypse is coming tomorrow? No. With love, but I have known Jeff for, God, I've been following and known of Jeff for 15 years, right? And he has called imminent apocalypse within 3 months, probably 20 times. We have yet to experience that, right? Like getting rid of cash and the grid going down and all that, the internet going out, power going out. We have yet to experience that on a mass scale. There's been little blips of it. Um, but that being said, it is never a bad idea to have skills. For me personally, I am living in a fancy apartment in a major city. I have an herb garden and that's it. And, I buy my stuff from the grocery store and I work on the internet, and I'm not physically set up to be apocalypse ready. However, I do know that if things were to shit hit the fan, I have places I can go and I have skills to contribute. Like I have a friend, his name's David. He owns a property. He owns an eco village actually in Jalisco, and I have an open invitation to run my ass there. And I would just plug in and start growing food and start using all the skills that I know how to do, and I would be fine, right? I do sleep very good at night knowing that. And I think the purpose of this Non-Conformist series is to provide people with practical information and hopefully inspire people. Like if you don't have a garden, start one, even if it's small. Like be able to take care of some mint plants, for example, right? Or, if you have never had chickens, but you can have you're allowed wherever you live, get a few chickens, figure out what it takes to keep some animals alive, figure out how to get the food. Um, we do have my friend Josh Martinez. He is a animal farmer in the Las Vegas desert. He meat farmer, right? So we have him giving a presentation. We have Ernie talking about his property that he's doing in the desert of Arizona. So it's really going to be examples of people that actually do the thing, followed by them actually doing the thing and how to do it and tips that they might have so that way you can learn from other people. instead of just hoping for the best and being like, yeah, I could theoretically grow some tomatoes and then, they get eaten by some
Yes.
weird bugs or something,
Or snails or deers. In
Right.
our case, everything gets eaten by deers.
Yeah, you need a
You
fence.
work, and then yeah, you need a fence. That's the fact. That's how it is. We need to start to wrap up. Where can people find you, or where would you like them to find you?
Okay, so everything that I do is funneled out through one of two websites, but really one website because you can find the link to the other website through that. It's mirandareneewebb.com. I'll send you the link. But you can find my
Yes.
social media there. You can contact me about web design work there. I am taking on more clients for next month if people want me to build them websites. Um, Rootless Renegade, the comic book that's these are for is you can find links for that through there, all sorts of things. The podcast that I mentioned earlier that I started that I'll be posting every 2 weeks. The first episode is up. It's my Anarchapulco speech. Um, because I figured it was the perfect way to introduce who I am and have that be kind of a basis, right? But it's really going to be conversations with people that I love. It's going to be with family, it's going to be with friends, it's going to be with people from Anarchapulco, a lot of just conversations about topics I care about with people I care about. But all of that is found through my website. I tried to make the website work in a way to where it has, every possible way for people to contact me there.
Great. We're putting that in the comment in the descriptions below. And in the very end, what is one thing you wish more people understood right now?
That there's not a right time to do anything. There's a lot of people that will put off starting the project. For me, like I waited for 5 years for the right time to do a podcast, and I had about 15 people message me after I released it and said, what took you so long? Oh, waiting for the right time. Well, there's never a right time to do anything, and this goes for everything, right? From, starting a business to having children, which I'm not doing that personally, but I have a lot of friends who do have children, um, to learning how to garden, to anything. Like it applies to anything. And the other thing is, and this is from my speech, and this is something that David, our new stage side manager, he kind of glommed onto, was a quote from Brother Ali, which is, the outcome is none of your business. It's not up to you what happens, after you're done doing something. You just have to try, enjoy the journey, and probably you'll end up in a better spot than where you expected. But if you go into something worried principally about the outcome, you're going to be disappointed. That's how it works.
So I'm sure you're right about this, that if one is hoping for like a particular outcome, it's mostly going to be disappointing probably. But if one is just doing something,
Right.
I have heard that many people said that have actually tried many things in life, and that have achieved many things in life, that yeah, they're going for the adventure and not for the outcome. So that's probably true. But thank you so much for now.